For months, FCC Chairman Ajit Pai has been lying to the American people about an alleged DDoS attack that conspicuously occurred at the same time that John Oliver instructed all of his viewers to leave pro-net neutrality comments on the FCC's electronic comment filing system. Now, this lie is officially starting to blow up in Ajit Pai's face because the FCC's Office of Inspector General recently released a report concluding, in fact, there was never a DDoS attack and that Ajit Pai had essentially been lying to everyone. Now, even though it was obvious to us all that there never was a DDoS attack, what's great about this report from the FCC OIG is that it forces Ajit Pai to do a 180 because he can't go against what the OIG is saying. And so as a result of him basically being exposed as a liar, well, now he was forced to testify in front of the Senate Commerce Committee where they grilled him for this particular lie. Not everyone. I mean, Republicans were very easy on him. But there was one exchange in particular between Ajit Pai and Senator Brian Schatz, and it did not go well for Ajit Pai. In fact, you can tell he was very uncomfortable. He was squirming. And Schatz basically asked him, look, if you knew that this was a lie and that there was never any evidence, why did you insist that there was a DDoS attack? And this is what Ajit Pai had to say for himself, because you're going to see here, he didn't take responsibility once. He just threw one of his own under a bus.
I want to follow up on the DDoS attack. What strikes me as difficult to digest is that there was an unprecedented number of comments that came in after the first John Oliver show that overwhelmed the system. And then there was another batch of unprecedented communications to the FCC website. And everybody figured that it was the same as last time, just intuitively. And then your CIO said that it was a DDoS attack. And yet, Ron Wyden and I and others in the legislative branch said, that doesn't make any sense. The tech community said, that doesn't make any sense. I think a lot of people's first instinct was that it didn't make any sense. So I understand your reliance on your CIO. I don't blame you for that. My question is, did you have any doubt at any time before the report came out a couple of weeks ago?
Senator, on May 8th, I believe it was, that Monday, when I heard that the ECFS system had been overwhelmed for a couple of hours, as I then understood it, my assumption was that it was John Oliver's viewers.
Right, so I got that part.
Yeah.
Then the CIO tells you it's a DDoS attack.
Correct.
And then you basically declare to the world that it was a DDoS attack,
right,
and including communicating with Congress that a federal crime has been committed. And the thing that I wonder about is, given your expertise in the law and expertise in tech, that why didn't you entertain any of those quite reasonable doubts that were out there in the community, or out there among your former colleagues in the tech community? It just seems odd that the moment your CIO says something that you run with it, and you ran with it quite aggressively all the way up until the point where, I guess it was last week or the week before, you say, well, I was duped. That's very hard to digest. So I'm trying to figure out, did you ever have any doubt between the point at which your CIO told you something and the point at which the IG told you that it was wrong?
Senator, I would urge any critics on this issue, read the entire report.
Right,
you will see, if I could just answer, Senator.
But no, you're not answering my question. Did you have any doubt?
Senator, I did have doubts, which is why I asked our chief of staff, who then asked the CIO explicitly, is this a result of John Oliver's viewers? He said, and I quote, we are 99% confident this was external folks deliberately trying to tie up the server. And he continued, this was definitely high traffic targeting ECFS to make it appear unresponsive to others.
So
Later on July 24th, I had a meeting in my office with certain IT staff. We asked them again, are you confident that this is what happened? They said yes, essentially replicating what the former CIO said in his statement.
Okay, I get it. So now you're trying to sort of muddle through this as your CIO is telling you something and the rest of the world is saying, that doesn't seem right.
That was fantastic to watch for a number of reasons. One, because it was clear Ajit Pai was squirming the entire time because he was backed into a corner and he didn't know how to defend himself. He couldn't use the usual talking points to kind of deflect. He was forced to answer the question. But what did he say? Well, he actually admitted that he didn't initially suspect that it was, in fact, a DDoS attack. In fact, He didn't think it was a DDoS attack, but he decided to go against his better judgment and accept the more convenient narrative that was given to him by his own CIO. So understand that this is essentially Ajit Pai's argument. I was never lying to the American people. I'm just a gullible idiot. That's what he's literally admitting to here. Wow. Amazing. So that admission there is really important because he said when his CIO told him that, or before his CIO told him that this was a DDoS attack, he never thought it was a DDoS attack because you'd have to be an idiot to think that. So now that he basically admitted, oh, I knew it wasn't a DDoS attack, well, he's going to have to explain to Senator Schatz why he insisted that it was, in fact, a DDoS attack, even if he knew that wasn't the truth.
The question I have is, in terms of your relationship with this committee and the public, and in the context of a quite partisan, quite hot battle around net neutrality and the legitimacy of the participation of the public in this net neutrality process, did it ever occur to you to say, you know, I've got these doubts now, and so my declarative statements from before, I'm not so sure that I should stick with those, and I'd like to modify my statements. In fact, Senator Schatz and Senator Wyden, I'd like to answer the letter that you sent me. So at some point before the IG report came out, did it occur to you to communicate back with the public that this may not have been a DDoS attack?
Senator, on January 23rd of 2018, I was informed by my chief of staff, who had been informed by the Office of Inspector General, that they had suspicions that the former chief information officer's statements to us and to Congress were inaccurate. The OIG then requested, because they had referred this matter for potential criminal prosecution to the Department of Justice, do not say anything to anyone. Ultimately, the OIG, it became known they were developing a report and that they were going to issue this report. Once we knew what conclusions were, it was very hard to stay quiet. We wanted the story to get out, not only because it vindicated what we'd been saying, that we'd relied on the chief information officer's representations, but also because otherwise we knew that members of this committee, including potentially you, would think, well, he knew something was wrong, but he didn't tell us about it. So the position I was in was, do we breach the Office of Inspector General's request for confidentiality, in which case the accusation from perhaps members of this committee would be, he's jeopardizing an independent OIG investigation, including a potential criminal prosecution, or do I adhere to the independent Inspector General's request?
I know.
It's a difficult position to be in. I made the judgment that we had to adhere to the OIG's request, even though I knew we would be falsely attacked for having done something inappropriate.
Do you consider my line of inquiry a false attack?
No, I'm saying plenty of others have certainly not held loose about these accusations.
I guess what I'm looking for is some measure of accountability as the chairman. And I understand that you were in a difficult position, but I can't imagine that there was not another way to thread this needle and deal with us in our oversight capacity.
Senator, I guess my only request to you would be, put yourself in my position from January 23rd until August 3rd, or whatever it was the report came out. You have a request from Inspector General, do not say anything to anyone. The story in this report vindicates my position. It was in our interest to get it out sooner. We wanted you to get this information sooner because it proved what we said. We didn't have the ability to do that. I could have done it, but then I would have been accused of stifling an OIG investigation, potentially frustrating a criminal prosecution. I did what I thought was the right thing to do, which was to stick by the OIG recommendation. And as I pointed out in my August 10th letter, and I quoted the very text on which we relied from May 9th, I believe it was, all the way forward. We relied on the representations of the former chief information officer, which in the OIG's investigation, and I would urge you in particular to read the memorandum of interview if you haven't. Those vindicate the position. We asked them, is this what it is? They said no. Have you talked to the FBI and DHS? They said yes. Those agencies have essentially concurred in our recommendations. That was not true.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. He's trying to find a way to flip the narrative and portray himself as the victim. It's not that the American people are the victims because he lied to them for months. It's that he's actually the victim. His defense is, oh golly gee, I just knew the truth, but I couldn't say anything because the OIG was doing this investigation and they told me not to say anything. Ajit, just stop. You've been caught in a lie take responsibility. You're the chair of the FCC. You lead this agency. So anything that any of your underlings do, well, that's your responsibility. And as Senator Schatz put it, I guess what I'm looking for is some measure of accountability as chairman. But we didn't get that. All he reverted back to was, oh, look, this is what the OIC says. So this is very, very telling. And I really got the sense that for the first time, Ajit Pai is actually worried about his career because he's been busted. It's now confirmed that he was lying to the American people, and he has no defense. He's backed into a corner, and all he can do is throw someone else under a bus in order to save his own ass. But here's what this comes down to. If Ajit Pai was a good faith actor, he'd actually respond to members of the Senate that requested evidence after he insisted for months that a DDoS attack did happen. And he'd just tell them, look, I can't provide you with the evidence at the request of our OIG because they're saying that I can't do that because there's this ongoing investigation. But as soon as this investigation is over, I'd be more than happy to oblige and provide you with any information that you needed. I just can't do it at this point in time because of this investigation that the OIG is doing. He could have said something like that, but he didn't. He chose to just lie and not change the script at all. And the reason why he did that is because he never thought that the OIG would come out and admit that this narrative was false and that there was never a DDoS attack. So he never thought he'd have to explain why he was maintaining that there was a DDoS attack for months, and now that he's having to explain himself and explain why he lied and deceived the American people, he has no idea how to respond because obviously, if they instructed you to not say anything, well, you can tell members of the Senate who are requesting evidence that you can't say anything. You're not revealing information and saying that you can't reveal information. You can just say, currently my hands are tied. But instead he frames it as, oh, I'm in this really difficult position. I just wanted to say something so bad, but I just couldn't. You are such a fucking liar, Ajit Pai, and it's obvious to everyone. And let's not forget that he's also refusing to cooperate with the New York Attorney General's office, who has repeatedly asked for help with regard to their investigation into comment fraud. And would you look at that, Ajit Pai hasn't done anything to help them. So it's not like this is just a one-off situation here for Ajit Pai. Lying and deceiving the American people has become the norm at the FCC under his leadership. So if it's too much pressure for you, then maybe you should resign, Ajit Pai. Because if you were placed in this really difficult position to where you had the truth, but you couldn't say anything to the American people, well then resign. Have someone who actually can take the heat be in the kitchen. But we all know that he's lying, and it was clear. You can just look at his body language. He was squirming there. He was getting very defensive because the truth is not on his side, because he was exposed as a gigantic fucking liar by his own agency. So I love that his lies are coming back to bite him in the ass. I think he's really setting himself up for a tumultuous time if he chooses to remain as the FCC chair, because there's more lies that are going to come out. He's going to be exposed by his own OIG because, again, he's being investigated by the FCC's Inspector General. So there's going to be more that comes out. It's only a matter of time. And I'm just going to love this, and I'm going to sit back and watch because Ajit Pai is a corrupt corporate tool, and he deserves to be impeached.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.